Hey, how's it going, everyone? And welcome to the Goblin Hideout, the premier NFT finance podcast. I am Helmas and joined by my co-host Terry. Today we have Zach and Medici with Abacus Spot, a new NFT valuation system. Welcome, Zach and Medici. First off, you guys can do a little quick introduction of yourself and the project.
So I am Zach. I guess to introduce myself, when I got crypto pilled, it was actually via NFTs and via art. I previously worked in music and just saw from the inside that the creatives and the artists that I love just weren't being financially compensated for their cultural impact, and kind of just put it in the back of my head and said to myself, okay, I'd like to work with creatives, but in this current system, it doesn't make sense. So kind of just said to myself, okay, I will revisit when there's some really exciting intersection of creativity and tech. Fast forward a couple of years and NBA Top Shot happened. I'm a basketball fan. And just the idea of digital collectibles just clicked with me. And I started reaching out to a bunch of digital artists that I loved, connected with an artist by the name of Young Jake, managed him throughout his NFT process. We sold a bunch of art, found myself working with a whale on a couple of projects, got myself into Sushi Swap, which gave me some DeFi exposure, and then landed myself with Medici working on Abacus and pricing NFTs.
Hey, I'm your friendly neighborhood Anon, Gio Medici. I got started a year and a half ago, probably through Top Shot as well. And I got a little more into the technical parts of this whole crypto world that we all live in at this point. I just was blown away by the intersection of all these different fields that it brings together. It's my favorite fields that you can have. So you have math in a way. You have a bunch of computer science when it comes to actually building these things and thinking through the logic of creating the systems. You have economics, obviously, with tokens and how you incentivize people to do certain things. And then you have general psychology of this is why someone wouldn't do something. And the best example I have of that, if you look at the structure of, let's say, Bitcoin or Ethereum and miners, you could put over 51% of the hash power in one picture with probably a few people, the heads of these huge mining pools. And even though you have all these hashing, all this stuff that protects Bitcoin on a programmatic level, the final barrier is that even if they were to attack, right, even if they were to kind of execute a 51% attack, they know that if they did that, it would shoot the value of their Bitcoin that they've mined already and kill the value of their hardware that they've already used. And so because they understand that, and so it's no longer a rational decision to do that, they won't. That's one example. And that's kind of my favorite things to get to think about and to get to work in and build. So I kind of fell in love with it there.
I guess that makes a lot of sense considering how deep sort of mechanism design and that type of game theoretic sort of gameplay is a big part of Abacus. But I guess before we introduce the project, out of curiosity, Zach and Medici, what were you guys sort of involved in before getting into crypto?
Nothing I did before had any connection to crypto. I didn't even know how to code before.
I was just searching and found myself here. And yeah, now I'm here.
Maybe guys, just give a quick overview of Abacus Spot in your words. Just tell us a little bit more about the project, some things you find interesting, and would love to hear y'all's overview on that.
I'll give the small brain explanation for the general public on DeFi brains and just everyone in general to grasp. And then I'll hand it off to Medici to kind of just take it to a whole nother level. In a straightforward way, Abacus is a protocol that prices NFTs at liquid-backed values, and people appraise NFTs at certain prices using what we call as an optimistic proof-of-stake network. And we can trust these people because there's money backing their call. If they take positions that are too risky on the price of an NFT, they're penalized and they're rewarded for accurately appraising. So the way that the protocol works is, let's say, Ryan, you have an NFT that's I can explain the protocol. So Ryan, let's say you owned an NFT that's worth 10 Ethereum. You hold it in your wallet. It gives you access to Discord. It gives you access to, certain events at conferences. You love this NFT. You've wrote it up to 10 ETH. And I say that it's worth 10 ETH because I guess that's just like the consensus market value. So you've done research on it and you're holding this NFT. And at the current moment, what you would like to have is you would like to have a backing of value of that NFT. And you would like to possibly take out a loan at a strong loan to value ratio. You sign a proof of life contract, which is basically just saying that you own this NFT and your NFT is on Abacus. Then myself and others. So let's say that NFT is up there and I look at that NFT and I say, okay, I think that NFT is worth 10 Ethereum. And through the protocol, you can back the value of that NFT in tranches. So imagine I have a bunch of ETH. I deploy 5 ETH that I have, and I stake from the position of 0 Ethereum to 5 Ethereum. And essentially what I'm saying there is that the NFT is worth at least 5. And I'm entering those positions in 1 ETH tranches. So at that point, the NFT has a backing of 5 ETH. Now imagine Terry comes in and Terry looks at this NFT and he does his research. And for some reason, his models are off or he has some weird indicator. He finds that this NFT is worth, let's say, 13 or 14 Ethereum. And he has a big bag of Ethereum and he'd like to deploy it and farm Abacus tokens. And he deploys his ETH from the position of 5 ETH to 12 ETH in those 1 ETH tranches. And he deploys that ETH for, let's say, 3 months. And essentially, like I said before, he's backing the value up to 12 Ethereum. Ryan, if you're that NFT holder, you now have your 10 ETH NFT. And you also have to have a pool of a 12 ETH backing behind it. So at any point, what you can do within those 3 months that people are staked is you can close the pool and you can liquidate the stakers, meaning myself and Terry. And the 12 ETH in that pool would go to you. And then your NFT immediately goes to auction. Imagine it goes to auction and it sells for, like we said, the 10 ETH market price. Me being in the position of 0 to 5, I make my ETH back plus any Abacus staking. Remember, I staked my 5 ETH for 3 months. And then Terry, if you were in the position of 5 to 12, given that the NFT has sold for 10 ETH, you're slashed at your most extreme positions. So you make back your money from 5 to 10, but you lose out on those 2 Ethereum that you had. Imagine you didn't close the pool and rather you went to, let's say there was a programmatic lending system or just a lender built on top of Abacus. Basically what you have is you have a liquid backed appraisal. So from the position of the lender, it's very low risk. What you have is you can lend at 100% certainty of how much the lender will receive in the case of default. So if you take out, let's say, a 12 ETH loan on that NFT and you can't pay that back, in the same way that you were able to close the pool, the lender can close the pool.
A little bit of clarity. Let's say Ryan came in and filled that 0 to 5 ETH tranche. Like the reason why we use tranches is because in the case of liquidation, it's on a FIFO basis. It means first in, first out. So the lowest tranches get liquidated first. But on the flip side, right, because then you would think, okay, if the lowest tranches get liquidated first, then they have the least risk by far. And so the question is, how do you reward people for taking on further risk by coming in at higher tranches? And so the way we do that is you basically put all tickets on a spectrum relative to the maximum ticket in the pool. And then everyone is basically placed on this range of 75% to 125% of the emissions that they should earn. So let's say, Ryan, you took the 0 to 5 ETH position, and Terry, you took the 5 to 12 ETH positions, right? So Ryan, you own 5 tranches, Terry, you own 7 tranches. Not only will Terry get more because he owns 7 tranches, assuming they lock up for the same amount of time, but because Terry took the relatively higher risk, his emission will be boosted at a premium of up to 125%, while Ryan will be discounted down to, it's different per ticket. So, but like, for example, the 0 to 1 ETH tranche will be discounted to 75%. And so then that's how we distribute the risk. And then the cool thing, what you can do as the owner of these pools is you can offer a bribe to incentivize. And this is not, I guess this is new, so I guess I'm sharing alpha. But what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to incentivize people to come in and trade at a certain one. You can incentivize with a general bribe or with a concentrated bribe. A general bribe is you bribe all the traders in the pool at once. Concentrated bribe is you say, if anyone who's in, let's say, tranche 10 to 12 will be the recipient of this bribe. And this is how much that each tranche will get for being there. there's some incentives at play there to kind of, you're not necessarily paying for everyone, but you're incentivizing them to hit the top bound if it's the proper price.
That's something that I found really interesting about you guys. It's that mechanism of sort of incentivizing earlier depositors and traders of tranches while also compensating people who are in late for the risk. In the white paper, you guys had another mechanism to sort of address that, where when it gets sold for a price that's larger than the reserve price, like some additional factors go into distributing the profits there, right?
Yeah. What happens there is that there's basically what's called the position premium. And so the position premium, when a pool closes and the auction concludes, a keeper will come in and they'll call this calculate position premium function, which basically essentially just lines up all the positions from 0 to the max ticket. And then it just increments values by their premium by 1 per ticket. So let's say the 0th ticket will start at 1. And then the 50th ticket will have 50, or the 100th ticket will have 100. And so what happens is that the 100th ticket will get 100 times the reward. And this isn't the exact numbers, but just for clarity of an example, the 100th ticket will get 100 times the reward of the 0th ticket based on the premium. So if, let's say the premium is 10 ETH, then the 100th ticket will get 100 times the first ticket in terms of the amount of that premium that they receive.
Is the ticket here sort of like positions in a tranche? So I guess I could buy 50 tickets, right?
I don't know why I just chose the name ticket for them. So I call each tranche, I just call it ticket. So if there's 100 tickets, that means, or if 100 tickets are filled, that means up to 100 ETH is deposited, let's say.
I mean, that's a super interesting sort of design space and mechanism design. You talked about sort of being interested in the intersection of psychology and math and computer science. I guess how'd you guys arrive at this sort of risk function? Because the emissions you guys have and the position premium distribution function that you guys have decided, it sort of implicitly decides the riskiness of an later tranche versus the earlier tranche, right? And then presumably, if that's mispriced, then these bribes would come in on top, which I'm guessing was sort of the thought process behind it. But I'm curious, what went into sort of deciding the math behind that?
So that part, it's funny because in college, I studied math for 2 semesters before I dropped out. And so I didn't really get so deep in it, but I have some gigabrains in the community that I was able to kind of call on. So with that part, it's very simple, where it's just simply incrementing a value for every ticket. But for the rewards, in terms of rewarding traders coming in, that part's a little less simple. It's not so complicated. Just basically square the position that they have. The idea that I have is also you want to have all these incredibly complex formulas that are at work, rewarding people and having these really dynamic systems. But you also got to remember that you have one, limited computation space. So creating a super complex math formula takes away from basic functions that you can allow people to do in the contract. But 2, it also just increases the cost of a transaction, which is already, right now, it's probably kind of low, but in times of high, where block space is in super high demand and everything, it gets really expensive. And so you don't really want that happening. So with that part, I kind of just eyeballed it. But then with the actual risk payout in terms of emissions, I was talking to someone who's in our community who's super, super smart. He was basically telling me, he mentioned, when you look at the difference in risk between positions 0 to 1, a ticket 0 to 1 and 1 to 2 is much lower than the difference in the risk between a position that's below floor. So let's say for punks 49 to 50, and then position 51 to 52, which is oh shit, I may be going over what the sale value is. In order to kind of accommodate that, what you do is you just, instead of doing it where it's you have a local max ticket or you have a max ticket per pool, let's say, and then you just check, oh, okay, you have this value 75. And then depending on the ticket number relative to the max ticket, you just add on a percentage to that value, right? So if it's the highest ticket, then you'd add on 50% to that value, and the premium they get is 125%. But what happens is then every single tranche has an equal risk distribution in terms of, the marginal increase in risk that we're assuming that they take on. When, as we just said, that's not true. And he basically was telling me about, I think there's something in options or whatever it is that, the higher you go, it doesn't increment linearly. It increments there's some formula that he showed me, but we both decided that, maybe it's not, again, the whole complexity piece of you have complexity here. You have to take away a basic function there. And so what I just decided is that we'll do it based on, you just square the ticket that they're liquidating from and the max ticket. As you get higher, as you get closer to the max ticket, the premium increases a little by more than just linearly. And so that's how you kind of make up for those risk distributions. But the cool thing is that the concentrated tranche rewards kind of allow the free market to come in and correct that over time. That's the nice thing. Even if that, because it's so hard, like the whole point of this is that it's nearly impossible to like programmatically price an NFT. And so if you can't do that, how do you programmatically price the risk of it? And the answer is you do a basic pricing, almost like a base fee for block space. And then you allow the people to come in and add on top of that, right? So if someone wants to add on top of that the reward, if it seems like it's required or other pools are doing it and they're not, then free markets decide. If there's no need to do that and they're being paid properly just purely off emissions, then free markets will decide that too. But I think that's the whole point of Abacus, is that you have this like nearly impossible thing to kind of accomplish in like pricing the risk of giving loans at certain values. And you just take it and you give it to the free market by letting them trade in these tranches, by letting the owners do concentrated bribes and general bribes. I don't know if ethos is the right word here, but that's like the ethos that I kind of want to impart on the system that is Abacus.
The concentrated bribe positions, like super, super neat, right? Because like you can then tailor the sort of risk-free value of a loan depending on whatever the person needs it for as well, right? Like if I have certain sort of size I want to move because I want to enter a DeFi position with a certain time frame, then I can sort of tailor that using those concentrated bribes. Zach, like you mentioned that people will be able to take out loans almost risk-free or underwrite loans risk-free. And I guess like, could you sort of elaborate on how that would work?
We are not doing the lending, but yeah, so essentially once you have the Ethereum locked up in that contract and you have that valuation on either the programmatic lender or even in a peer-to-peer network, you're no longer really lending on the NFT. You're just lending on ETH because you're not worried about a rug pull or anything else regarding the value of the NFT. You're just lending on what the value of that pool is. You're playing against the time until that valuation is no longer there.
And do these sort of protocols like sit as an intermediary? So like they would take the NFT, then they would pledge it into like a quote unquote like vault, and then people would trade and they would be the one to close the position. Essentially, like it wouldn't require any sort of integration with the protocol, right?
Yeah, you're essentially like building on top of the knowledge that we are giving you from our protocol. And again, at the beginning, the opening of the pools, the emissions aren't turned on for the stakers until an NFT owner signs off on the proof of life of that NFT. So your NFT is never in the Abacus smart contract. However, if you want to lend on that NFT, we've been working with a couple of stealth lenders that will hopefully be providing loans on our NFTs when we launch. So the idea is they just work off of the value that our protocol is kind of spitting out. And they're kind of inarguable valuations for the NFTs because at any point, there's kind of this game, whether it's the lender or the NFT holder, they always have the ability to liquidate the pool.
When do you guys have a target date on launching? And then maybe can you talk a little bit about tokenomics and governance and how that's going to work?
What I realized is launch dates it's like a little bit of a rug pull in itself, because you say you want to launch and then, you either have something else to add to it or you have something else to add to it. It gets pushed back. If there's anything I learned in the past, like I've been at it for 6 months now, it's that to never give like an actually concrete launch date.
Always be the announcer of the announcement.
I will say, though, that the goal is to have the entire system ready before we announce a specific launch date. So it's like, okay, everything's done, everything's audited, everything's tested properly and everything. We'll be ready to launch whenever. But once we know that we're ready and that we won't have any, setbacks or whatever, then it makes sense to announce it, because it's kind of not fair to the community and anyone relying on it to keep saying a time and then taking it back and then saying a time and then taking it back. On the tokenomics of it all, I don't know what protocol we saw do this. Oh, LooksRare just did this. I think that this idea of direct emissions for an action results in a lot of loss of value. You look at a lot of protocols and many of them have resulted in probably a pretty large loss of value because they've emitted more value to people than they've actually gotten in terms of real fees that they've received or real revenue that they've generated. And so what I wanted to do was kind of abstract that away, which is that you have this, everyone's competing for the same pool of these credits, and they can generate these credits however much they want. So almost like the emissions, however, we control exactly how much ADC is emitted every 2 weeks. Like that's the length of an epoch. And so we control that, and we have it exactly at what we want. And we can, now that we have that, manipulate this tokenomic system to inflate as fast as we want. There's Abacus takes off and people all come in and start using it. That's not going to change the rate of inflation. Or if it drops off, that's not going to change the rate of inflation either. And the nice thing is that, especially in a market like where we are right now, where things are all rocking and rolling, everything's going crazy, when you have the power to now manipulate this kind of system, and it's actually interesting, I tweeted this the other day, was that, I would encourage everyone to at least try coding the most simple of contracts, because I think when you do that and you see exactly how much power you have over the minutia of systems, it's like addicting, it's like a drug. And that's what this, right? Now that we have that separation or that buffer, which is this epic distribution credits, now we can tailor these tokenomics exactly how we want, and it's perfectly predictable for anyone outside who's looking in, for anyone inside who's trying to figure out how the system's going to grow and how it's going to inflate. It's perfectly predictable. That's what the goal there was. And the white paper, it's a little outdated. I adjusted the emissions rate. It'll take 5 years to get to 2 billion token soft cap, and then it'll have a terminal rate of inflation that could range between 2 and 8%. And that's controlled by governance. And so perfect segue into governance, I guess. My take on governing and just this whole, buzzword of DAOs and community owned, honestly, I think a lot of it is bullshit, and it's going to end up being worse for the crypto world. Not DAOs, but DAOs that dress up like they're not run by a group of people. This whole idea of like decentralizing a DAO and making, decision making, have the entire DAO make every single decision. I don't know if that's the right thing to do. Kane is onto something. Optimism is onto something with this, council DAO split. And I think that's how we're going to do it too. I haven't had so much time to think about governance quite yet, but my idea of it is that it should be minimized. Although I think investment DAOs are different, honestly, and some DAOs are different. When you have a protocol, the whole idea of autonomous is that there's no hierarchy. There's no like, I'm important than you. Autonomy has none of that. That's what autonomy is. An autonomous system doesn't have that. Democracy has that. Monarchy has that. Oligarchy has that. Autonomy is literally just the most chaotic system that you can have in the world. And that's why I think also that, this whole idea of smart contracts is so cool, because you take the most chaotic system of governance that you can possibly have, and you make it the most orderly system of governance that you could possibly have, because you have this idea, like this code is law idea, where things will act exactly how they will act unless someone comes in and hacks it or something, but that's like tail risk, and that's not counting in this idea. I think in order to achieve that, you need to take away a lot of extraneous decisions. So for us, governance will have powers like gauge control and inflation, but again, even inflation is within a range. So they can never break out of that 8% range, out of the 8% max, let's say, or below the 2% min. And everything else that will be included in governance will also have that same exact principle applied to it, which is I want to make this Abacus system to the point where I am basically obsolete, or it doesn't rely on me.
That makes a lot of sense. And I guess sort of like on the note of, like systems naturally being sort of chaotic. And then once you try to suppress that entropy, like they do pop up elsewhere, right? It's like there's like on-chain, contract pushing, 7-day delays, boom, you can't move as fast in times of distress. And so, as you mentioned, has been proven that have to be sort of nimble sometimes. Something you mentioned was interesting to me in that, like sort of these like value accrual methods to the token, or you sort of alluded to them. And I'd be curious to hear, right? Like part of the emissions is to get people to trade these tranches or tickets, enter into positions so people can take out higher LTV loans. Like on the other side, like what makes people want those tokens?
This isn't a valueless governance token. So basically what it has kind of ingrained in it is that I just applied our own version of a gas fee to our network, to Abacus, let's say. You look at Ethereum, they burned what, like $6 billion worth of fees? If you look at it another way, that's $6 billion of revenue. And so why wouldn't you mirror that? Like, why not do that too? And in doing that, right, that's, most people have Ethereum as a speculative asset, but a lot of people go out and buy Ethereum a lot of the time because they need to go pay gas fees. I do that all the time. I've sold everything I owned in November, and the only thing I had left was Ethereum to pay gas fees. The other thing that it does too of having these network gas fees is it also emulates the idea of like, what is proof of stake supposed to, and the long-term goal of Ethereum supposed to accomplish? It's that fees outpace inflation in terms of paying miners properly, or they subsidize whatever inflation is lacking in terms of paying miners. That's the same goal here. What happens is that when you spend your ABC in a gas required transaction, so that includes buying into a pool, closing someone's position, creating a pending order, basically all the core functionality or a lot of the core functionality requires that you have this. What that does is it, instead of burning those tokens, because, and I'll go on that tangent in a second about deflationary, stagnant, and inflationary systems, instead of burning them, what you could do is you just tack them on to that Epic's emissions. And so what you're doing by doing that is you're actually just rewarding future miners. Burning rewards previous miners. It rewards income. Adding it on to the emission instead of burning rewards future miners. So it constantly incentivizes people to continuously come in and go after it, because as the network grows, as more people use it, there will be more fees paid on top of the general emission to these miners, and they'll get higher rewards, which ends up turning into higher yields. That's one way that it kind of accrues value, just because it's required, like a gas fee. So that's one way that it kind of accrues value, just purely out of utility. Another way is you have this, VABC world. And what that allows you to do is one, governance, but that's not like the kind of big value add of it. The value add is that I don't believe that we need any sort of treasury. Maybe we need a little bit, but we have pretty much zero payroll. And I think we'll have that into the future. I don't see us needing to grow the team anymore, really. So what happens is that now that you don't really need a treasury, because we don't need a treasury, like when you have a treasury, it's important if you're like trying to be a reserve currency or maybe a base unit and you need to use it to stabilize the value of your currency. However, if you're not trying to do that, having a treasury does nothing to increase the value of your currency, i.e. increasing the interest of other people to come in and participate in your network to earn that currency, because it just backs it. Whereas if you were to give it to the people, right, you redistribute the revenue, that's an added value. And so what you could do now is you take this VABC holders, and what you do is you just, at the start, it'll be 90%, but you just give them 90% of the revenue. And what you're doing is you're almost paying them for the inflation that you're causing.
This is the staking? Is this the VEABC, the voting escrowed?
Yeah, this is voting escrowed ABC. And for those of you that don't know what that is, whoever's listening to this, voting escrowed ABC is basically ABC that you've decided to lock up. The minimum lockup time will be 2 weeks. The maximum lockup time will be 4 months. And what that means is you're at the voting escrow token. So you basically pledge to lock this token up for that long. So it's now, let's say, an escrow, and now you have the right to go vote. On top of that, what we do is we distribute 90% of the rewards. And this isn't distributed in ABC, none of that. It's straight distributed right out to those holders. So that's one thing that they get, right? So again, as the protocol grows and as more people come in and try and get these credits, more revenue is generated, because in order to get the credits, you actually have to purchase them, right? Once you earn them, you're basically earning the right to purchase them. Once you purchase them, that money is distributed to all these people at the end of it. And so that's one value accrual system. Another one is that we've basically taken Convex and copied this bribe rewards as well and meshed it in with one into one. And so what happens is that we have this gauge control, and gauge control will boost the emission amount that a certain collection has. So if punks have 20% of the gauge control, anyone trading in a punk pool will get their emissions at a 20% premium. So why does that matter? Because if you have your emissions are at 20% higher than, let's say, apes, then more people are going to come and trade in your pools, because they'll get a higher realized yield on that than they would in a pool that isn't boosted. Okay, so now what I imagine will happen is you may have cartels or people with special interests in boosting the value of certain collections doing that. They'll collect ABC, they'll lock it up, and they'll play with the gauge control based on what their interest is. You may have people that are collection agnostic. So I don't care what collection I stake this in. I want to make some extra money. So what happens is it's called auto-allocating your voting power. So you just say, I don't want to allocate it to collection, but I want to auto-allocate it. And what happens is anyone can come in and they pay bribes. And based on the proportional bribe that's allocated to each collection, the auto-allocated VABC is just basically put towards that collection in terms of voting power. And then the VABC holders all get their bribes proportional to how much they auto-allocated and how much was bribed. It was also paid out in each.
Let's maybe zoom out a little bit for the last kind of 10 minutes and would love to get y'all's opinion just on the general state of the NFT financialization market. Maybe specifically where you guys see it going over the next 6 to 9 months. Maybe we can talk about some dynamics between the difference of peer-to-peer versus peer-to-pool lending. Really just happy to hear your guys' general overview of the landscape and where you see it going though.
I'm pretty laser focused on the issue that we are solving, which is, I think what we're seeing among some competitors are some great programmatic lending and peer-to-pool solutions. However, the loan to value ratios are pretty low. And what I'm excited for everyone in the field to kind of tackle is just to take on bigger risk with these loans and just unlock a lot bigger liquidity for the holders and just pump more money into the NFT space and just see what comes from there.
Medici, any thoughts?
Yeah, in the kind of micro outlook of all of it, everything's down, but compared to what it was before, I don't know if it's right to the people who've been through those to call it one, but it's a relative bear market. Let's call it a local bottom or a local bear market. I think the cool thing about bear markets, which is why I'm personally excited about it, is one, you have the things with true utility that shine, but two, you have the fat is just cut out. So all this gold rush, mint an NFT, sell it for 100x of some stupid, new whatever, that's going to get killed. But I'm already seeing it, right? Mints are sky high. People are at a loss. Everyone's pissed. Or, you have these things that tank because someone comes out and with Azuki, they say the guy rugged a bunch of projects. And so, he's giving this to the community, blah, blah, blah. That tanked too. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a lot of these things that basically made promises to provide value through further inflation. We're going to see a lot of them go, nuke 80%. NFT world hasn't had their Hiroshima and Nagasaki moment. They haven't been around long enough to have that. And I think it's coming, to be honest. I think blue chips will last through it. Ones with real benefits to holders may last through it. But I think we're in the ICO phase, right? The ICO phase of, I don't know when, I wasn't around then, but I've read enough about it where it was at 2017, 2018. That was the same thing, right? You get into an ICO, it goes up 10x. You sell it at the top, you're good. You don't sell it at the top, you basically get rough, right? You got to be the first one out. And that's what we're seeing here. It's exact same things playing out here. So what I think will happen is that people are going to realize that these promised roadmaps, that's not the benefit of an NFT. Some of it's cool. I love punks. I think they're awesome. To me, they're a piece of history of crypto. Apes, I don't think are as cool. That's just my opinion. But I think Yuga Labs has done an unbelievable job at continuously promising further value. And they've done an unbelievable job of creating value by doing that. However, what I do think is that the value of an NFT, or let's start with the value. What's the value of an ERC20 token? Or the value of crypto? The value of crypto is permissionless transactions, period, full stop. The value of ERC20s is you can tokenize nearly anything as a fungible token and trade it with no one's permission, period, full stop. So now we get to this token, an ERC721 or an NFT. The value isn't, oh shit, I just made a 10K PFP project with a crazy roadmap. That's bullshit. The value is that you can tokenize a unique item now. So I can tokenize a house or a car or a ring or a phone or my computer and sell it. And the transaction will clear and the funds will clear in the speed of a single Ethereum transaction, whether it's L1, L2, whatever you want to call it. That's the value of it. If you imagine on a more macro scale, right? I think it was BlackRock who went out and bought a bunch of houses in Phoenix recently. Imagine if when they bought all those houses, and I don't know if they had to go through escrow or whatever. So just imagine a normal person goes and buys a house. And instead of having to wait 30 days for everything to clear and make sure that the one party is messing with the other party, you can have your movers come in the same day that you sign that transaction. Because the funds cleared, you now own the deed to the house, which is represented through this NFT. That's the power of it, that I can transfer a house now in 12 seconds or however long it takes for a transaction to go through. That's what I think the power is. And that's what this goal, that's if you want to take it full circle, right? That's what the goal of Abacus has been. In our world, you have so many people who don't have access to capital on their houses, on whatever it is. And if you look at DeFi, as is right now, is not something that's very empowering in that way, right? If I want to take out $100 worth of USDC, I need to lock up $150 of ETH. So the only use of it is for levered up trading, With this NFT stuff and NFT finance, it's the first time that you have a decentralized, permissionless way for anyone, no matter who they are, what their background is, or where they live, to come in and not have a price gouge because, maybe they have lower credit or whatever it is. They can actually get increased purchasing power because they had something that was liquid that they own. And now they have something liquid that they can go pay their rent with, or they can go do whatever it is that they need to do with. That was the reason why I started this Abacus. I was talking on the phone with someone and they were like, wouldn't it be so cool if you can get a loan on the house the same way you can get a loan on, your crypto and information this way with all this stuff? I was like, yeah, it would, but how do you price that house? And then, I thought about that for a while and then out came Abacus. That's where we're headed. And in order to get there, a lot of things need to die off on the way there. And I think they will. I'm excited for it. I'm sure many aren't. I'm a shit trader, so I don't own any of this stuff. So I'm excited to see, everyone get reality checked real quick, if I'm being honest.
On this road to digitizing assets, and not only just digital assets, but also like real assets, the most important thing for people to participate in this economy is the ability to sort of not only like number one, price things correctly, because then you can do different operations on it, but also just expand this like financialization landscape, maybe like mortgages, increasing homeownership.
What's the narrative right now? Algo stablecoins suck. They lose everyone money, all this shit, right? That's what the narrative is. They'll never work. And the truth is, in order to have a truly internet native currency, is I need to be able to take that internet native currency and without having to withdraw it to USD or withdraw it to euros or yen, whatever it is, I need to be able to go and buy groceries. I need to be able to go and pay my car off. I need to be able to pay my mortgage with it. That's what you need. That's the power that you need an internet native currency to have. The way that you get there is by tokenizing these real world assets. The way you get there is through legislation. Let's say, for example, you need notaries to accept the fact that if you NFT the deed to a building or a house, when you transfer that, the person who got it is the owner now. Those things need to fall in place. So I don't think we're necessarily close. I think maybe we're a few 10 years out or whatever. But the point is that once you get there, now if you have a way to actually value those things on chain, I could do those transactions on chain without depending on an outside oracle coming in. Because another thing, I think oracles are terrible. And so you don't have to depend on that anymore. That's incredibly powerful. And I think it's incredibly empowering because what happens next is now you have an algo. Let's say you can adopt an algo stable if you want to. And if enough people say, I will accept this, if you think about first, there's this super interesting paper by Nick Szabo. He is one of my favorite people that I read. I would encourage everyone that is listening to this to go read it, all of this stuff. One of the things he wrote is about artifacts of wealth. So if you follow things that represented wealth back thousands of years, right, you'll get back to a place where they were literally using snail shells. I don't know what they were called, but they were literally using snail shells. And they would tether them on a necklace. That's how people would know how much wealth someone had. The snail shells were worth nothing on their own, except they just were widely accepted to represent that you did something for me. And so I gave this to you. How did I get it? I did something for someone else and they gave it to me. I did a service and I got it. That then transitioned into silver and gold coins or bronze coins or whatever it is, right? How did bronze coins or how did gold coins or silver coins or bronze coins get their value? It's not like, if you have it, you live forever. No, everyone just accepted. If we all accept this common token, then what will happen is that we'll be able to trade. The world will be able to trade. Everyone will benefit from trade and we'll all be better off. So let's accept it. Like that's purely what happened. It was just, they chose a unit of account and they accepted it. So then what happened? Then gold, slowly but surely, people kept using it. Gold coins, now gold bars. Oh shit, now gold is a store of value, right? No one's trading gold coins. I don't go to the store and pay with a gold dollar coin to get a chocolate bar. No, pay with a credit card or a dollar. But point is that, okay, so now you look at the US dollar. What was that backed by? For 200 years, it was backed by gold because gold had already been given that stamp of approval by the world of we're all accepting that this is valuable for the sake of the world and for the sake of trade. So now the US dollar did that for 200 years. And they said, oh shit, we're big enough and we're powerful enough and we have enough dependent on us that it's likely that everyone's just going to accept that, we have value. So now, okay, I think it was the 50s, let's remove the gold standard. It's limited. And you had things like fractional reserve banking come out and all that. And the point is that that's all a currency is. It's a collective agreement that this is good for all of us in order to be able to trade together and be able to have a base unit of account. And so we're all going to accept it as that. And we're going to inject it with that value. So now I could go buy bread with my dollars. I could go buy a house with my dollars, let's say. And I think that's the same thing that needs to happen to this internet native currency. You need to have a group of services that accept it in payment. And then what you do is okay, now that group of services accepts it in payment, it's not necessarily a stable. It's just they accept it as a single, the base unit of account. Now that all of those things accept it, okay, what can you do next? Is it time to expand to these real world assets like I was saying before? Can I start buying groceries with this thing if they have an inherent value, right? And I think that's how we get there. So I think this whole goal of NFT finance is it's like the first step in getting there. Unlocking the time value of money is one of the most powerful things you could possibly do. Now you got to unlock the time value of money. How do you unlock the time value of money? With lending. How do you accomplish programmatic lending? Hopefully with Abacus.
How can people get involved with Abacus, and where can they go to learn more about Abacus?
So we have a white paper out. It's a little outdated at this point. I've kind of taken on the mantle as a schizo anon. But yeah, we have a white paper. That's like the canonical piece. It covers most things. There will be some changes that will be coming in the near future to it. Other than that, I would encourage you to join our Discord. Like, I don't know, people are awesome in there. I think we're going to have a movie night. We're going to read a book, like Green Eggs and Ham or something like that. And so it's just a good time. You may get trolled when you join, but it is what it is. And then just reach out. There's a lot of people that have been around for a while that have given us a lot of value. And one person, for example, there's Callius was an early member. Now he's building like gasoline finance. Eichin was an early member. He ended up, joining the team. He's just an absolute Chad. And so it's just kind of come in, have a good time. If you like it, stay and participate. If you don't like it, you don't have to. It's completely up to you. We have a few thousand people in there who will troll you and hang out with you. And if you ever need anything, we're all there to help. And then if you have ideas and you want to run it by me, like I'm always happy to help people. Always very happy to connect people. If you have a really cool idea and it merits it, then, I could connect you with my investors and everything. And if they like it, then it's on you from there. But I think it's just kind of come, join the community, have a good time. And if you identify things that you can do, just do them. That's the whole point of this. That's why I kind of want to make myself obsolete in this Abacus world, because I think when you have a relevant founder or a founder who is visibly around and kind of seems to be running things, people are more hesitant to create without their permission. When in reality, the whole point of this is that they should create without my permission. I would love nothing more than that. And if I can't build a system that allows someone to do that without jeopardizing the integrity of the system, then I have failed. And so I think if you want to get involved, just come hang out. That's the start. Start of the best friendships is just hanging out.
Medici, Zach, really appreciate you guys jumping on today. Thanks for hopping on the Goblin Hideout podcast. You can follow Terry at 0xTayTayHoHo or myself, Ryan at _Hellmask. Guys, Zach, do you guys want to just kick out your Twitter handles really quick?
Yeah, I'm just OXGeoMedici. You can find me in my ramblings there.
You can find me at knobnet.net. My last name is Noble, and so the first 3 letters are Knob. And then Abacus is Abacus_WTF.
Go check out Abacus. And thank you guys for your time.
And come shoot the shit.
Thanks, guys. Come shoot the shit whenever you guys want.
Thanks.